Hello, everyone. Good morning, VMGM. Welcome to Web3 Writers by Vagabond Media. Hello, Happy New Year. I am so excited to be here with all of you. And I see that we have OddWritings in the audience with us. And I'm going to see if I can get my mic to work as Rionna Morgan. And so, OddWritings, hello, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
How have you been?
Ooh, that's some funky sound effects you had there when you spoke just now. I've been all right. I'm getting over a headache right now. I took some Advil and it should be kicking in soon. I get these quite often, but it's a first world problem, so I'm not worried about it. They're very minor headaches.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear. I am sad to hear that you do have these headaches, though. That's really rough.
No worries.
So I see that we have Grace in the audience as well. Hello, Grace. Would you like to join us and introduce yourself?
Hi. I have some issues with with my internet today, so I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, can definitely hear you.
I don't know. It was so crazy from 2 a.m. and it's still like that. So I'm Grace. I'm an artist. I don't know. That's it.
That's it. That's not it. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Nice
And
to meet you. Finally, finally, I could
I'm
join you. I always late, oh my God, I missed again.
right. No, I'm so glad that you're joining. I'm so glad that you're joining. And so, dear audience, whether you're listening now or in the future, I think years ago, we remember that I am the writer and creator of the 7 Love Stories NFT collection. And Grace is one of the most beautiful illustrators. She actually designed the cover. So I'll see if I can find a link and share it so that we can all appreciate and be in awe of her beautiful talent. And Grace is also a writer. And so she's joining us this year and every year from now on, I hope, to share some of her journey with us. And so, Grace, please feel free to jump in at any point and talk about the kinds of things that you're working on and share with us your journey. And then OddWritings, please, how about you introduce yourself? We didn't get to that yet.
Sure. So I'm OddWritings, otherwise known as George, which is obviously my real name, but you can call me Odd. That's fine. I kind of like it when people do that, anyways. So I write poetry, and I create NFTs out of those poems, and I also publish the poems in traditional ways, all self-published, but also in magazines when I can get away with it. Um, so that's basically it. I try to do experiments from time to time, trying to think of different ways of getting more people to read poetry and to accept poetry NFTs, which can be very difficult. There's a lot of pushback against NFTs amongst poets, I find. But anyways, I've got several projects going on, and I'll finish one. It takes about 5 or 6 months, and then I'll start another one, and kind of goes like that. Some of the projects go better than others, but like anything else, it's something you just keep on working at, and that's what I like doing.
Right. That's definitely true. And folks, OddWritings is a very talented poet. Maybe we'll see if we could get him to read something to us to close out the space today. And Grace, you're always welcome. If you have a little snippet you would like to read or something you would like to talk about, that would be beautiful. And so, hello everyone. Happy New Year. This is Rionna Morgan, and I am host of the Vagabond Web3 Writers Hour. And we are so happy to join you and ring in the new year together. And today's show, we're going to talk about starting strong in the new year and setting writing goals for 2025. And so just like always, I have a question to pass around to everybody. Why is setting writing goals important? Why does it matter? And so that's the first question I want to pass around. But I probably should introduce myself. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm sort of out of practice here. So I'm Rionna Morgan. I am an internationally published best-selling author in my own right. But then I am also owner and CEO of Whitney Morgan Media, a forward-thinking publishing company. I work a lot with Paige Dow, and I work a lot here with Vagabond Media, and we are doing some amazing things at Vagabond Media coming in 2025. I'm so excited to share that with you when it's time, when we're ready. Anyway, and so the first question, why setting writing goals matters. And I see, Grace, you've got your hand up. Please join us.
Oh, thank you, Rionna. First of all, I want to say that I'm very happy that we had the project together. It was such a pleasure working with you. So kind, so creative, and I would say one of my best clients, I would say. It was so easy, and communication, and I'm very glad that we had this project, and I'm sure it will have a great future. And about your question, I will just share a little bit about my experience. It's been like for years. I wanted to write like a sci-fi and fantasy books. It was just my dream, for many, many, many years. But as usual, because I was like a super private person and it was not very easy for me to go like public, social media, all this stuff. And I had like tons of notes, like maybe 10 books already written on paper, but I was like, I have to do something, but I've never had any experience like how it should be done. So I just did the way I thought like it is the right way. So, and I took like the last year, I was not like, let's say like a break from social life. I was not very, very popular, let's say, on social media. And I just sat down and I started to review all my notes, like, one by one, and summarizing it and creating something even more. And I finally have my first draft. I'm almost finished it, but I think for me it was important, like, to be out of the world, let's say, just, focus on what I wanted to do for many years. And also worked, it will be also like, related to my cosmic art, and, that's for me how to organize, like, I think when you start, it's different. Maybe when experience, it will be like differently, and I will have more ideas how to do that. But for me, it was important, like, to take a break from everything and just sit down and summarize everything I've done for years. And let's see how it will go.
Right. Absolutely. I think that that's a great idea. And so I want to hear from OddWritings, but that leads to the next type of writing goals. And so, George, Odd, what do you think about setting writing goals? Why does it matter? Why is it important?
Well, for me, there's two different ways in which it matters, depending on my current mood, I guess. There's sometimes when I get very excited about what I'm doing and I do a lot of things, and in that case, the goals are necessary in order to kind of keep track and make sure I don't take on too many things such that I can't finish on time. So it's kind of a way of having a marker saying, okay, look, I have a goal of establishing this project by this date and a goal of establishing this other project by this other date. And that kind of lets me plan and say, okay, don't take on too much because, don't forget about these too. And also tracking progress towards those two. I can kind of gauge as to how close I am to finishing those projects. The other is when I'm feeling in the opposite way, where I can't seem to get myself to do anything. And in that case, the goal is there to say, okay, you got to write something today because you got this thing coming up and you're falling behind. And so, it's a spur in that case. It's the opposite of the other situation. Now, it's good to have these goals. Sometimes it's good to have a semi-short period where you don't have any goals, and that's usually in times of rest. Like what Grace just said, sometimes you need to step back, especially with social media. If it gets overwhelming, you need a break, and so you need at least some flexibility. Not having a goal makes that flexibility much easier. Probably the best thing to do is to still have a goal, but have it be somewhat flexible. So, don't set goals. I would recommend not setting goals such that they're so tight that you have no wiggle room. Leave yourself a little bit of wiggle room so that if you need to take a break, you can do that. So it's basically it's a tool used for planning, and planning your time. And for me, it's good for the two things I already mentioned, either getting myself to work more or not overdoing it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just want to echo what both of you said about sometimes there's a need to step back and look at the bigger picture and settle into where you're really wanting to go, what direction you're really wanting to point your energy and time and dedication to at the moment. I think that setting goals is really, really important because there's so much research centered around like the check mark list. Like if you've got a list and you put a check mark on the list, even if it's a small piece, you feel like you have accomplished quite a few things. And I can remember when I was first setting up my website way back when in 2012, I felt so overwhelmed with everything that had to happen. Like setting up a website is an insane endeavor because there's so much that you need to think about. Like, what do you want it to look like visually versus what do you want the content to be? And then the content has to be ever changing, and understanding how to do that. Plus, you're writing, you're still writing. You've books you're writing, you have poetry you're writing, you have short stories and all these things that you're writing. And so I really feel like that a writer lives in a life where they're not just a writer, they're also a business owner. They run their own business with looking at the time that they can put forth for social media, the time that they can put forth toward upkeep of the website, the time that they're putting forth for attending spaces like this, and then the time that they can put forth for the actual writing, the piece that we all love. And oddly enough, I know so many writers who do all of those other things so well and so diligently, but there's one thing that kind of falls by the wayside. It's the writing. And so, one of my goals this year is to do less of, not the other, but maybe a little less of social media, maybe a little less of having big roles in all sorts of places, and do a little more writing, because I have this book I really would like to finish. And I've been working on it for a while, and it's to the point where I'm just like, oh, every time I have to set it down, I get sad because I really want to pick it up and really immerse myself in it. And so I'm kind of rearranging some things in my life this year, so that I can do that, so I can pick up the writing, so that the writing isn't the thing that's pushed to the side. But I know so many writers who there's all of these other responsibilities, and the thing that gets set down is the writing. And so I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that. What do you think about, what do you think about, um, what I just shared?
Well, I would agree with what you said. I view those things as overhead. There's a certain amount of overhead that you got to do. Um, for me, one of the hardest things is marketing, and that for me is it's I it's there's some people who are really good at it, others are not so great at it, and there's also a different demand for certain things, and you got to know how to what target audience, if that's the right word, for your marketing, what to concentrate on. For me, I get very small bang for the buck, I guess, that I put into marketing. Not money wise, but in terms of time. And so, that's a form of overhead, which I kind of need to do, but for me, it's the least productive. But then there's other overhead, which I would consider, some things that other people maybe don't think of. Like, for example, expanding your audience. And for me, an easy way of doing that is to be on social media, and not to overdo it on social media, but every day I try to gain at least one more friend. So in other words, for me, my target friend is a poet, right? So I'll start looking around and reading poetry online. I'll find a poem that I like. I'll make a comment on one of their posts, and constantly get to know more people, but not so much that it gets overdone. So that's kind of a long-term goal of mine, is to increase that audience, not so much so that I could sell to them, but because through networking and that kind of thing, you get other ideas. You find out about contests, about maybe this is a good place to send a poem. Maybe this is a good place. Maybe this is not a good place. Uh, that all needs to happen. But again, like all the other things, if you do too much of it, then the writing gets put off to the side. Now, in my case, for poetry, it's a little bit different than what I imagine writing fiction, a fiction book would be. I tried to write a fiction book once and I couldn't do it at all. But for me, on poems, it takes a long time, for me to write a particular poem. And so that affects the amount of time that I spend on all the other overhead. There's a if I try to rush through a poem, then it affects the quality of it. But at the same time, I don't want to spend too much on a poem, because then it's like, okay, at some point you got to say, yes, this is the final form. This is it, stick with it, and then move on. Uh, so that's what I would add to the conversation.
That's a great big ad. That's a lot. And I can only imagine the type of poetry that you write, how much time, like every word is, I mean, I feel like as a writer, when I'm writing fiction, every word, or the words I choose, there's specific words that I choose that I'm like really sort of married to. I really, like, if an editor were to be like, you need to get rid of that word, I would be like, I don't really know. I kind of picked it for a reason. But I feel like that there's so much more of that with you in what you write and the way that you write and the genre that you write within the poetry. And so that's just got to be a big, big deal. Um, and so, yeah, I definitely hear you with that. And I like the idea of that being overhead. And I love your idea of making one new friend a day. And so that's a lovely goal. And so, Grace, how about you? Do you want to jump in and talk about, um, I don't know, I said a whole bunch of stuff, I guess, about setting down those other extracurriculars, the overhead, like what George was saying, and how do you manage that, and what do you do? How does that work for you?
Um, first of all, I'm not like experienced like George or you. This is my like it will be my first sci-fi fantasy book. But I've been like having notes, like noting for many years. Like, but you know, our life happens. I do have goals, of course, and the first one is my book to come out this year, and I also worked on my new art collection. It's also related to let's say to one of my coming books. It's also about cosmos, you know, all this stuff. So let's say like I took 1 year off and I was like working little by little and learning. Even I took some courses for marketing because I have no idea how to do that. So I have to learn about that. So we will see how it will go little by little again. And my goal is to publish the first book, and the second book, I hope it will be sooner and it will be interesting. And that will be my goal. And as I mentioned earlier, I have so many notes for so many books already. So I would say like if I had like, you know, 10 heads and 10 arms or 20 arms, it would help, you know, with all my goals. Yeah. And I don't know, I just love what I do and I'm enjoying it. And this is the first time in my life that I finally decided to do what I have to do. You know, like it's not like I have to do, but it's like what I want to do, you know. And about George, because I know you're the poet, but in my first book I have like a prophecy and a song. Oh my God, it took me forever because I did not like words. I did not like the sentences. Oh my God, I spent more time on my song and my prophecy partly yet. Like then I would write a chapter, honestly. But I hope I did it. So we will see. But yeah, it's like it's not that easy, you know, to find right words and relate it to the story and still keeping it like mystery, you know, magical, and to give this idea to the reader to get like interested to the story, you know, but not to tell everything in this song. Oh my God, it was a headache. But it is an interesting experience also. Like this. And by the way, my new art collection is coming soon. Just need to finish a little bit. So I will post it like one by one. And again, I don't know yet how to do that, but it will be related to my future books. So I've decided to create art. Before I was creating like, you know, just sci-fi, fantasy, abstraction, cosmic stuff. But now I decided to connect pieces to future books. So it will be like more logical for me, you know. Something like that.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I love how you're weaving all of these things together, and I can definitely relate to having a poem or a song or something that's original within something that I've written and spending forever on it. And so I definitely hear you. And so we have spent quite a bit of time here talking about this and talking about, you know, the difference between maybe long-term goals and then short-term goals. And when I was a teacher, I talked to my students, and even as a college professor, I talked to my students there about SMART goals. Utilizing a SMART framework for putting goals together. And SMART being the acronym for specific, goals, measurable goals, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And so then when we think about putting our goals together, a specific goal of getting my writing calendar done and put together, so then I can fill it in with goals that are measurable and achievable so that I can do the check mark like what we talked about, and then that they're relevant to actually the current project, and time bound. And so it's just sort of a framework that we can maybe think about or look at. And I really feel like that some of us, most all of us, sort of do this naturally in our lives about what do we need to do first and what comes into the circle and how much time do we spend on this, things like that. But I just thought that that would be a nice thing to share, this SMART framework. And the other thing that I really use in my life is writing down everything everything I want to do. And then I order it in a, do this first, do this second, do this third, because I get myself not overwhelmed so much anymore because I've kind of learned to work with what my brain does, but it really carries, I have 5 million things to do, but if I write them down and start with what is closest in the circle, then I work with what's in the circle, and then the other things I know that I'm not going to forget because I've written them down, but then I sort of pull them in, this comes in, and I work on it that way. Is this something that you guys can relate to, or do you do something completely different when you have a whole list of things you need to do, as far as writing is concerned?
Well, I used to do something similar. It was a long time ago. It's been a while since I've done that. I used to write everything down and order them. Even as a little kid, I remember, back when I was, I guess, 7 or 8 years old, and what was important to me was what was going to be on television. My sister always thought I was crazy for doing this, but on Sundays we would get the newspaper, and this is in the United States, and the newspaper would have a TV guide within it. This is long before cable and online streaming and all that kind of stuff. So we just had the three channels, the three television channels where I lived, and it would have the TV guide. And so what I would do is I would schedule my television watching. So I would go through and go to every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, see what shows I wanted to watch, circle them, right? And then I would make a little list. And that way I would be sure not to miss any of these shows. I'd look at my list every day in the morning. What am I going to do today? This after school. Oh, Happy Days is at 3:30, and then followed by Laverne and Shirley. I want to watch that, and blah, blah, blah. So it was kind of a little bit over the top, right? Especially for a little kid. Over time, that kind of, I got away from that. And nowadays, sometimes I'll start to write things down, but I really haven't done much of it. Since I've been writing poetry, which I started to do, I guess, I've done it all my life, but never seriously until about 2020. And that's when I started to do it pretty much full time. It was a lot more of, kind of keeping things straight in my head. And I'm not sure why I flipped to doing that. Because I did, like I said, I did used to write and plan everything out beforehand. That's probably a good thing for me to do because I've had a couple of ideas, usually in the morning, and I try to remember them, and sometimes I don't quite remember exactly what I had done, had thought of. So that's good advice, Rionna. I'm gonna maybe put that into effect right after this talk. I'm gonna start writing down a few things that I've been floating in my head that I've convinced myself, I'll kind of remember how, what to do. I'll remember these. But, of course, if you forget, do I notice that I forget? I may be forgetting more than I know. So who knows?
I think that's great. I'm so glad that that idea was good. Writing these things down. And so, yeah, I love the story about you and your TV guide and all of the things when you were little being like, I have to watch. And I love Laverne and Shirley. That's so funny. That's such a fun story. And so, yeah, writing the things down. I mean, I even, I have a bag that I carry with me places, all the time. It has my wallet, and my phone, and, all of these various things that I carry around with me, but it has 2 journals in it. One, if I have something long that I want to write, and then 2, if it's just like a list of something, but they're just 2 little journals that I have tucked in my bag all the time. And, people laugh at me, not laugh like, ha ha ha, that's crazy, but it's more like oh, I never even thought of something like that. And, yeah, I have a journal in the bathroom. I have a journal beside my bed. I have, and that's the journal that stays in that room. And because you never know. And honestly, I get the best ideas when I'm brushing my teeth. I have no idea why, but I just do. I'm just like, that's amazing, because I think maybe I'm stuck in one place and I can't move, and there's nothing else to do. I'm just there. And so my mind can just sort of wander, and it wanders to great places, I think, sometimes. And so, Grace, yes, please talk about what you do, how you handle your work lists, and how you decide what comes into the circle, and all of that. Please share your process.
First of all, I would say we are almost similar because my journals everywhere too. Like, oh my god, in my bag, in my bedroom, in my office, like everywhere. I have a funny story recently. I finished one of my chapters, and it was like around 3 a.m. already, so I was so tired. Like, I went to my bed, and I was like sleeping. And for some reason, I took the journal, and it was in my office, like, because I was reading and writing, and I forgot it in the office, office room. And I was so tired. I was already like, closing my eyes and like almost dreaming. And I was like, and I got this amazing idea for one of my devices, for my book, the name of it, like, like really great one. Like, you have it and you have to write. And I was so tired. And I was like looking for my journal, and it is not besides me. And I was like, oh my God, I don't have like any strength to go to my office. And my phone was far away, and I was like, repeating the word, the word like non-stop, to sleep with this name of this device, not to forget next morning. It was a disaster for me, because next morning, of course, I forgot it, and I remembered it only the next. Oh my God, it was a disaster. But I remembered. But I mean, this is just. But in a serious matter, I was writing journals, let's say, since I was a kid, because I had this. Like my mother said, crazy character, question everything. And when we were like, at school studying law of physics, astronomy, etc., and I was questioning everything. So I've decided that I will open new laws, and I was writing down all questions and looking for all answers. I would go to libraries, look for answers, read like very rare books, begging for them to find for me, like, because we did not have internet. But yes, this is how old I am. We did not have internet. We did not have like proper TV. Like, oh my, and library. Let me tell you about it. Was one library, and I had to walk like. So I grew up in the area where we are in kilometers, like several kilometers to the library. so I would go there every single day, I swear to God, to read any rare books I could find, because they would never give you any books. Like, if they have like 1-2 books, you have to read it inside the library, in the room. So since then, I always have like my notes and my planning, what I'm going to do. This is how I started like journaling everything.
I love that so much. That's so funny. I think it's hilarious that you were repeating the title of your book over and over and over and over and over and over so you wouldn't forget. And so, yeah, and I'm so glad that you remembered. Oh my goodness, that would be such a heartsick moment to forget and really forget, really, really forget. Oh my goodness. And so, Dee Wright, I see that you've joined us in the audience here. Hello, hello, welcome. And I know that there are many more people in the audience that maybe we can't see right away, but if you ever want to come up and join in on the conversation, because that's really what we like to have. We like to have many writers' voices share their perspectives and their thoughts, and so that we can all learn from each other and know that we're not alone in all of these pieces that we experience. So then we can celebrate each other and be there for each other along this path. And so my next question deals with tools to keep you on track. There's so many writing tools out there. There's like Scrivener, and Ulysses and Evernote and Notion and Trello and all of these things. Do you guys use any of these tools? What do you have? Do you have anything like this in your world that you use?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Honestly, I don't have any additional tools. I'm using like let's say old school. I have no idea even if there are any tools for writing, because many years ago, I've read somewhere, I don't remember who said that, but it's like in my mind all the time, is to write a great book, you have to have the great life experience. Something like that. I don't remember who said that. Maybe I did. I don't even remember. But my point is, I just use the paper, my pencil, and just my laptop or laptop, and I use some grammar stuff, softwares but no AI. I don't want to mix with AI, and I do have linguistic degrees, so it's some kind it's helping me, for example, for my fictional language. And when I was younger, I was like, why do I need this degree? Because I was like some kind of nerd of my life, and I was just everybody, why you study so much? But I just love to learn things. It's not like, to have 100 degrees, you know what I mean? But after so many years, it helps me to understand how to build the language, like fictional language, not the AI creation, but on my own, like with sounds I hear should be like that, to build somehow the grammar, because it will take more time, but I mean, at least something I will try to do. But I otherwise I don't really use anything else. I don't even know if there are any. I haven't done my research for that because I haven't needed.
Yeah, my version of tools, the only thing I do, I mean, I have a notebook where I write my poems down. Usually, sometimes I'll be drinking coffee, and that's when I'll be writing some of this stuff down. But my version of tools is basically just a word processor, and like not a full, like on Windows, I have a Windows machine, so I use Notepad, which, isn't even a word processor. There's just something for taking notes, but I find it to be the easiest. So my version of tools will be websites. So there's certain websites that I've bookmarked that I find helpful. One of the things I like to do with the poems is to know words come from. I love etymologies. And so I have a couple of websites that I go to, such as etymonline.com, that, specialize in etymologies. And I'll use that in picking which words I want to put into my poems, because I like to have that double meaning of, well, originally the roots of the word meant this, and that actually influences what I want to put into the poem. And at the same time, I want to make my poems vague enough. I don't know if vague is the right word, but I want to make them such that they can be interpreted various different ways, because to me, that's what gives value to a poem. It's something where you don't want to read it just once and think that's it. You want it to be something where you read it, and then maybe a couple of years later you read it again and you'll see something that you hadn't seen there before based on, experience you've had in the meantime and other meanings. When Grace was talking about writing her own language, I love that, because it reminds me of the Silmarillion. I used to read Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, and the Silmarillion was written by his son Christopher. And I'm sure you all know where Tolkien made up. He also was a professor and of Old English, and he knew old Anglo-Saxon and all these things, and he came up with the Elvish language and the Dwarf language and all these different languages that he uses inside Lord of the Rings. And the Silmarillion contains a lot of the stuff that didn't make it into the Lord of the Rings, and a lot of it has to do with word meanings and that kind of stuff. So I remember as a kid, I used to love going through those and just being fascinated by that. I've always loved languages. So in that sense, that's kind of like that's a tool. I would consider that a tool. It's not a technological tool, but it's a conceptual tool that I would use. Another one would be the website for the Oxford English Dictionary. Now for those, if I go to that website, huge chunks of it you have to actually pay for, but there's other chunks that you don't. And so I'll go to the ones that you don't, and I'll look up a word, and instead of looking at the etymology, it'll list all these different meanings, right? Because you'll have a common word like the word sleep, or, the word fold, for example, and there'll be over 40 different meanings. And if you go through all these meanings, a lot of them are out of date. And the OAD will give you time span. So it'll say, we first detected this word was first detected in writing in, 1432 as far as we know. And by 1730, it was gone. People just stopped using it. And so there's this obsolete meaning to the words. And I love doing that too. So that also gives me ideas, and it lets me play with words. So that's another, what I would call a tool. And I've often thought, I spent a lot of years as a software developer. I was trained as a software developer. And one of the things I imagined writing, but which I never actually did, would have been a tool for poetry where as you're typing on the left-hand side, you're writing a poem. It would, the etymology of words would pop up on the right of your screen, and obsolete definitions would also pop up on the right of your screen. And so basically it would be doing this looking up stuff for you as you type. The idea being that it gives you ideas as you go along. But I never did actually do that. But if there were a tool like that specifically for poetry, then I might look into it. But I haven't up to now. I know tools out there exist for writing in general, especially for novels, to keep track of characters and that kind of thing, to make sure that what you've written about one character doesn't conflict with the history of another character. People will look through and they say, well, it's actually impossible for this because character Fred Jones, was supposed to be in college, but over here it says that he was on a different planet or whatever. So, there's tools I know that'll keep that stuff in check. But for me, a much more interesting tool would be having to do with the meanings of words themselves and how they relate. And also about concepts that don't relate, because that's another thing about poetry. I often use an example of Wallace Stevens as a poem. There's a phrase in one of his poems where I've mentioned it before. he calls it he'll mention the milky monsters of the mind. And so that'll be just one line in a poem. But the very fact that, it has alliteration, so it sounds good. It starts with all the M's, milky monsters of the mind, and it has kind of a rhythm to it. But at the same time, there's concepts that are juxtaposed. So milky monster, you could think of that as like, well, milky, what does that mean? You could think, well, it's white. It's kind of maybe misty, something that's not clear. But at the same time, you have the concept of nutrition because you think, well, people drink milk and it's very nutritious and blah, blah, blah. So a milky monster, what is that? It's a milky monster of the mind. A monster is something that's deformed, but at the same time, it's something that's, causes awe and it causes, there's all these different concepts, and juxtaposing the concepts is what makes a lot of poetry interesting. So that would be another tool for me, would be something that takes different nuances of and connotations of words and compares the two and maybe throws some out that you think don't belong, but then they actually do. And you end up with a poem. But to make a long rambling answer concise, my tools are web pages and not at this point applications.
That is so fascinating. And I'm very much the writer that doesn't use any outside tools either. I actually have I don't know, I guess it would be hardware that is so devoid of any kind of tool that it doesn't even attach to the internet or anything. It's called an Alpha Smart. And I've had it for years, a decade maybe. It's lasted so long. It takes 3 AA batteries and I can just type on it wherever I am. And so that's always in my bag also, wherever I go. It has 8 different file slots or 9 different file slots. Where I can have one where I'm like working on the current book that I'm working on, or 2, I've got a different project, or, I've got a different list or something that I'm working on. But I love it because it types so nice. I'm very persnickety in some way, I guess, about the keyboard I type on, because I really like for it to be lovely to type on. It's like writing with a pen, that it has smooth writing. I'm very persnickety about that too. I really like, and I like a super sharp pencil. I'm so, I have my particulars about those kinds of things, but my Alpha Smart is my favorite writing tool because it doesn't do anything. It only records whatever it is that I'm typing, and then I can connect it with some kind of USB cord to my computer, open up a Word document and press send, and it just types everything into the Word document that I just typed on. And so, yeah, I can take that traveling, and I don't need my computer. I don't need anything else. I can just take my little Alpha Smart, but they don't make them anymore. The company has, I don't know if it went out of business or if it transitioned to something else, but there are other things like it. If you dig around on Amazon or online or whatever, you can, because I was like, what am I going to do when this dies? Am I going to be able to find another one? And yes, I can. But mine is still going strong, so I really like it. I really, really like it. One application that I've tried is Scrivener. I got it years ago. And I spent so much time trying to figure out how it actually works than working it. And so I just kind of went by the wayside. It was kind of spendy to get, I thought, but then and I thought, so I'm going to really, utilize it and work on it. And I just didn't. I could never figure out what the pieces were to it. I watched a couple videos and, but it would just never fit my style. So that was okay. But, another thing I use is Trello. Trello is something that I do use, and it's a great online to-do list because I can link it to things. It's just, you just put in a little box of this is what I need to do, and you can link a website to it or link a project to it or whatever. And so that I really do like. I really do like that. I use that all the time with Whitney Morgan Media. and I can share it with the others who work at Whitney Morgan Media also. And so that's really, really handy, and we can communicate back and forth like that in a very cool way. And so I see that we have Ola as a listener. And so Ola, we are talking about setting goals here as writers in 2025, and the ways that we do that and the tools we use to keep us motivated and keep us on track and all of that. And so if you want to jump up and talk about things that you've got going on that deal with our topic, we would absolutely love you to do that. And so please feel free. Just raise up your hand, or I'll send you a note to invite you, and we would love to hear from you. And so then my next question for the group is, how do we stay motivated? How do we get up every day? And because there's some times where you absolutely, like, you can't do anything but write. Like, you don't want to even have breakfast necessarily. You just want to write. And, so, but then there's some days where you're like, oh, I'm kind of worn out. And what do you do when you're kind of worn out versus the days when you really, really want to write? What do you do? What do you do to stay motivated? What do you do to balance that? How does that look in your writing life? Oh my gosh, and we're almost done for the day. I can't even believe it. I'm loving this conversation so much. I can't even believe we're almost to the top of the hour. Okay, so I guess we better make our answers quick. I am loving this. This is one of my favorite shows, I think, of all time. And we've had some amazing shows. So please, OddWritings, tell us, what do you think? How do you balance the motivation and the work life?
Well, for me, it works as a feedback loop. So if I wake up and I'm not particularly enthused, the more hours pass that I feel that way, the worse it gets. And so, my easiest way of getting past that is to do something similar to what you mentioned, which is just do one small thing. It can be, just something, very, very small, something that maybe takes 20 minutes, but just something that adds on to what I'm doing. Maybe I'll take my manuscript, I'll change the formatting and save it. And that's it. I mean, just something trivial, because that gives me a psychological little feeling that, oh, maybe I did something. And from there, I can kind of build out of the funk. That works the best for me. It's not a straightforward, it's not the same thing every time, but I try to think at least of something to do, because the longer I don't do things, the worse it gets.
For me, motivation, oh my God. So first of all, if I have a goal, I'm kind of motivated already. So it's just in my character. And another one, if let's say I feel tired or lazy, I have to be angry. So I just pick up, I have like a couple of books, like, in different languages, and they're like very terrible for me. And I open the book, one, yes, and I start reading, and I understand, oh, you know what I mean? And I get angry that if I don't do this, it will look like that. So I push myself to do. I do it every time, and it works for me.
Oh my goodness, Grace. Oh my goodness, that's so funny. So OddWritings, I think that you're do the small thing, pick a small thing to do to keep you on track, or at least give you the satisfaction or fulfillment that you've done some writing related piece that day, and that you're still on track, you're still doing great, and giving yourself, I think the biggest thing is giving yourself the grace to take the break that you need, because I think that as writers, when we run up against a wall of man, I'm worn out. My brain is tired. I don't know what to do next. Giving us ourselves the grace to be like, okay, so today I'm just going to rest. Today I'm going to read, or today I'm going to, and then tomorrow I will feel much better and get back after it. And I think that if we do that and realize that that's okay, then that's okay. Like, we don't have to go all the time, because then you will really get worn out and you'll get burned out, and then you'll set it down, and then the world won't get the story or the poem or the short story or the piece that your heart is trying to get you to write. And so I think that that's just something to keep in mind, is there's all of these tools and there's all of these things, and all of these goals are absolutely wonderful. And even some of us would argue imperative to our writing life, as a writer, our profession as a writer. But then also remembering, just like with every other profession, just like with every other thing that people do, it's okay to take the break and then get back after it after the fact. And so, oh my goodness, today has been so wonderful, you guys. I've absolutely loved it. Grace, please come every single time. OddWritings, please come every single time. It's been so much fun, so wonderful. And I really love your guys' input and your insights. And OddWritings, I'm so sorry we're out of time. I really wanted you to be able to read a poem. And so maybe next week we can have you open the space with one, maybe read one to us. And then Grace, if you have a little piece or little couple stanzas of a song or something that you want to read, we would absolutely love to hear it. And then Ola, please return to us. We are here every Tuesday at the same time, 2:00 Eastern, and we would absolutely love to have you join us on stage and share, if you would like, some pieces of your writing life. Okay. And so now, to everyone listening now or in the future, when you hear this, write back to us. Let us know. What do you do? How do you set your goals? How do you manage your writing life? Do you take breaks? Do you have tools that you use to help keep you on track and help keep you motivated and feel celebrated? And because I would love to hear. Okay. And so in holding with tradition of ending the Web3 Writers by Vagabond Media, we're going to close the space with an aloha. Our creator, CD Demisio, lives in Japan. He moved far, far away and is not in the same time zone to do this with us anymore. But he ended every space with an aloha because he has lived in Hawaii and loves Hawaii and wants to honor that tradition there. And so how we do this is, everyone who's on stage, and even if you're listening and you can join in with us, that would be wonderful. On the count of 3, we just open our mics, and 1, 2, 3, then we say aloha. So whenever you're ready, we can open our mics. 1, 2, 3.
Aloha.
Aloha. Thank you all so much. Much love around the world, and we will see you next week. Thank you.